It was one of the deadliest catastrophes in human history, a silent, invisible killer that swept across continents and reshaped civilization. Between 1347 and 1353, a mysterious plague tore through Europe with unimaginable ferocity, wiping out an estimated 50 to 60% of the population. Entire families vanished, cities collapsed. The world was left trembling in the shadow of a disaster so vast it became known by three chilling names: the Great Mortality, the Great Pestilence, the Black Death. For more than 600 years, one haunting question lingered. Where did it actually begin? What was the first spark that ignited this global inferno, this biological apocalypse that rewrote the course of human history? That mystery resisted scholars for centuries, until now. Thanks to forgotten 19th-century excavations, cutting-edge DNA science, and the relentless curiosity of a few determined researchers, the origin of the Black Death has finally been uncovered. And it all begins, not in London's plague pits or the ports of Italy, but with a simple stone slab in the mountains of Central Asia, etched with a single ominous word: pestilence. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to stay updated with all our latest discoveries. A forgotten clue in the mountains. The story starts in the summer of 1886. Russian archaeologists were surveying two tiny cemeteries near the village of Kyrgyzstan, close to Lake Issyk Kul in modern-day Kyrgyzstan. The graves belonged to a small Nestorian Christian community, Silk Road traders whose lives were woven into the vast economic networks of Asia. Among dozens of stone-marked burials, dated 1338 and 1339, nearly a decade before the Black Death reached Europe, one gravestone stood out. It read, "This is the tomb of the believer, Sanmak. He died of pestilence." The word struck the researchers as unusual. Pestilence was a broad medieval term, used for any mysterious, devastating disease. The archaeologists took notes, shipped the remains to St. Petersburg, and the evidence was shelved, forgotten for a century.
The historian who noticed the impossible. Enter historian Philip Slavin of the University of Stirling. While studying the environmental and economic roots of the Black Death, Slavin stumbled across the old excavation records. Something immediately caught his eye. Between 1338 and 1339, 118 individuals from this small community had been buried, many with gravestones explicitly referencing pestilence. This wasn't coincidence. This was a mass mortality event. Slavin became convinced he had found the very first outbreak of the Black Death. But belief isn't proof. To confirm it, he needed something impossible: DNA from victims dead for nearly 700 years. The geneticists joined the hunt. At the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology, a team of paleogeneticists had been building a massive global family tree of Yersinia pestis, the bacterium that causes plague. After sequencing over 1,300 samples from humans, rodents, and archaeological sites across the world, they discovered something astonishing. In the early 14th century, plague underwent a genetic Big Bang. 4 new lineages suddenly emerged from a single ancestral strain. One of these lineages caused the Black Death, but Europe's plague victims showed mutations that proved they were not the source. The true origin had to lie elsewhere. When the researchers heard Slavin's findings, they immediately joined forces. The DNA that changed history. Working with Russian institutions responsible for the old Issyk Kul remains, the team extracted DNA from the teeth of 7 individuals, teeth being the best place to find preserved blood-borne pathogens. In 3 of them, they found it: Yersinia pestis, Not just any strain, but when sequenced and placed onto their vast genetic family tree, it matched the exact point where the 4 major lineages split. This was it, the ancestral strain, the genetic mother of all future plagues, ground zero of the Black Death. The origin of the deadliest pandemic in recorded history was no longer a mystery. It had a name, a place, and a date. Kyrgyzstan, 1338.
How the plague jumped to humans. The region around Lake Issyk Kul is a natural plague reservoir, home to marmots, voles, gerbils, and other rodents that have carried plague for millennia. A sudden climatic shift, likely warm, wet springs, may have triggered a rodent population boom. More rodents meant more fleas. More fleas meant more chances for plague to leap into humans, a process known as zoonotic spillover. A single infected marmot, hunted for food or fur, may have been enough to spark the outbreak that killed the Issyk Kul community. The Silk Road, pathway of death. The final mystery was how this localized outbreak traveled over 3,500 kilometers to the Black Sea, where it exploded into Europe. Slavin found the answer in the graves themselves. The people of Kyrgyzstan were traders. They were buried with pearls from the Indian Ocean, coins from Persia, goods from across the Mediterranean. Their caravans traveled the Silk Road, across deserts, mountains, and empires, and stowed away within those caravans were almost certainly black rats, and on those rats, infected fleas. The plague traveled slowly, invisibly, settlement by settlement, until it reached the Crimean city of Kaffa in 1346. There, in one of history's earliest known acts of biological warfare, Mongol forces reportedly catapulted plague-infected corpses over the city walls. From Kaffa, Genoese ships carried the infected rats to Europe's ports, where overcrowded cities, booming rat populations, and poor sanitation created a perfect storm for catastrophe. The Black Death had arrived. A discovery transforms a small, overlooked graveyard in Kyrgyzstan into the epicenter of a global catastrophe. It shows how a microscopic organism, born in the wild heart of Central Asia, reshaped kingdoms, economies, religions, and the path of human civilization. All from a word carved in stone. Pestilence.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and explore more astonishing discoveries that continue to rewrite our understanding of the world. Until next time.